Hi everybody, today I'm going to teach you how to plan the introduction to your fractured fairy tale. I'm going to model how to create an introduction, and then today you are going to be responsible for filling out the first page in your template, which is the introduction of your fractured fairy tale. So we're starting to draft our story so that we can reach our goals. We're going to make sure that our draft has a beginning, a problem, three main events, and a conclusion and solution. So today I'm going to be modeling that beginning, and also I'm going to introduce the problem in my beginning. So I'll show you what that will look like and how we can stretch out that planner that we worked on yesterday to create a detailed introduction. So some things to remember before we even begin. A successful introduction should be detailed. You should be able to build a snapshot of your setting and your characters through your describing language. Make sure you introduce not only the setting, the characters, but also the problem. Sentence starters, because this is a fairy tale, your story may begin very differently than other narratives you've written in the past. So you might use a traditional sentence starter like once upon a time, or long ago in a land far, far away. Or you may know the story of the three little pigs. There once lived, a long time ago, or in a land far, far away. Of course, you're not limited to those introduction sentence starters, but they are a great starting point if you're not sure where to go. So before I start drafting, I want to go back and look at my plan. I'm going to look closely at my setting, my characters, and my problem because I'm going to be introducing all of those elements into my introduction. So my setting, it takes place on an iceberg in the Southern Ocean near Antarctica. The house materials that they're making their homes out of are feathers, bones, and ice. I know that will probably come in later as I'm planning my story, but it's good to keep in mind. My good characters are the three little penguins and the orca. My evil character is the big bad leopard seal. And my problem is that the big bad leopard seal is going to destroy the penguins' homes and try to eat them. I can peek at my solution and my happily ever after ending, but that will not come into play today. This is the template that I'm going to be working on. It's the same template that you're working on. I'm going to model stretching up my ideas for my planner to create an introduction, and I'm going to type into the same template that you're using during your independent work today. You'll see there's a space for your title. There's also a space for your beginning, your setting, characters, and problem. On the left-hand side, there are questions to help guide your writing. Since I'm not there with you to help physically, I wrote down some questions that I would ask if I were. Make sure you include who the good characters are and make sure you describe them so that your readers can picture what they look like and how they act. Your setting, you want to paint a picture with your setting. Where do they live? What's it like there? Add at least two details, and I wrote down a simile. So let's use some figurative language. So if you don't remember, a simile uses the words like and as to compare two things that are different but share a quality in common. So for example, you may have heard some common ones like, I'm as hungry as a lion. So of course, you and a lion are not the same, but you share a trait in common. You're hungry. So I'm going to try to come up with a simile in that section that describes the setting. My problem, I'm going to answer questions about like this. Why do they decide to leave home? Who do they need to watch out for? And how do they know the bad character's out to get them? I'm going to keep all of those things in mind as I write. You'll see there's sentence starters. These are most likely the sentence starters that I'm going to use, but you may have a different one that you'd like to use. If that's the case, you'll just backspace, and I'll show you how to do that once I start typing, and replace my sentence starter with your own. Okay, let's start. The three little blank and the big bad blank. So I'm going to go over this. My story is the three little penguins and the big bad leopard seal. Once upon a time, don't need that, there were three little penguins I'm going to describe them. They were siblings, but very different from one another. The youngest sibling was very carefree and relaxed, but typically he rushed through his work. He made careless mistakes. That's going to come into play as I describe how he built his house. The middle penguin was a bit more responsible, but still pretty lazy. Oops, there we go. And then I'm going to say the oldest penguin was the most responsible of them all. He was hardworking and often had to clean up after his two younger siblings. Just got a lag. So wait, there we go. So my description of my penguins is meant to allude to the future problems that are going to come up. Just like in the traditional story, two of my characters are not going to create strong homes. Now I'm going to move on to the setting. They lived on an iceberg in the Antarctic, floating above the Southern Ocean. The blank was as blank as blank. So this is where I could use a simile. So I'm going to write the iceberg itself. Mrs. Dre is making a few typos. I'm just going back and fixing them before or as I'm writing. The iceberg itself was as frigidly cold as, I need to think of something cold. Let's see, as a popsicle. And they wouldn't have it any other way. They loved their home growing up. There was a problem. I'll introduce it there. Since I used as instead of like, I'm going to erase this other blank space for my simile. One day, okay, I'll introduce the problem here. There were not as many fish to eat around the iceberg as there used to be when they were young. So that's alluding to my problem, and now I'm going to go to this final section, the problem. Why do they decide to leave home? Who do they need to watch out for? How do they know the bad characters out to get them? How do they feel as they set off? So I'm going to keep those questions in mind as I write and try to answer them as I fill in my blanks. One day, the three penguins decided, to move to a new ice floe in hopes that they would find more fish to eat. They knew that they needed to watch out for the big, bad leopard seal because their mama told them to. Their mom warned them that there was a leopard seal on the loose with a passion for eating penguins. And that sentence with an exclamation point because I want it to stand out. And that, of course, would be shocking to the penguins. Erase the period that I have. Feeling blank, they set off. So I need to answer the question, how do they feel as they set off? Well, they're moving to a new place. They know that there's danger lurking, but they're also excited to solve the problem of being hungry. So I'm going to say feeling nervous, but excited, they set off. Now, if I look ahead, I see middle event 1 here. That's where I know I can stop. We're going to be doing this tomorrow. So I'm done with my introduction. Now, before I were to turn it in to the teacher to say, oh, I'm finished, I'm going to read through it and make sure I have all of the parts that I want to include and make sure that I've answered the questions. Once upon a time, there were 3 little penguins. They were siblings, but very different from one another. The youngest sibling was very carefree and relaxed, but typically he rushed through his work and made careless mistakes. The middle penguin was a bit more responsible, but still pretty lazy. The oldest penguin was the most responsible of them all. He was hardworking and often had to clean up after his 2 younger siblings. They lived on an iceberg in the Antarctic, floating above the Southern Ocean. The iceberg itself was as frigidly cold as a popsicle, and they wouldn't have it any other way. They loved their home growing up, but there was a problem. There was not as many fish to eat around the iceberg as there used to be when they were younger. One day, the 3 penguins decided to move to a new ice floe in hopes that they would find more fish to eat. They knew that they needed to watch out for the big bad leopard seal because their mom warned them that there was a leopard seal on the loose with a passion for eating penguins. Feeling nervous but excited, they set off. I'm going to add a sentence here because I feel like I need to explain why they're nervous and excited a little more clearly. So after I say there was a leopard seal on the loose with a passion for eating penguins, the penguins understood the danger. They knew they had to take the risk. They wanted to eat. Feeling nervous but excited, they set off. Okay. Now that I've read it, I'm confident that I've answered the questions that are guiding my writing, and my writing flows together. So I'm feeling confident and I'm ready to turn in. That's exactly what you're going to do today. After you read through your writing, you're going to turn it in so that I can check it out before we move to the next event. So today you're going to draft the beginning of your story using the template provided to you. You'll see the sentence starters that I used to guide your writing. You do not have to use them. If you want to start your story with something other than once upon a time, if you'd rather say long, long ago or many, many years ago, you can absolutely do that. Just make sure that your sentence is complete and clear and still answers all of the questions that I have here to guide you. Okay, when you are done with your assignment for today, make sure you turn it in. I'm excited to see how you stretch those those ideas from your plan with details. All right, it's time to start writing.